Hola, buenas tardes. Hello, everyone. This is Abelardo de la Peña Jr., Director of Marketing and Communications for La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, welcoming you to En Casa con la Plaza, Cocina, which is our Monday series of conversations, demonstrations with noted chefs, restaurant owners, cooks, people involved with our finest artwork, our cuisine. So to serve as the host for today's program, I'm going to hand it off to Jimena Martin, our Director of La Cocina and Programming.
Thank you. Thank you, Abelardo. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining us. We have a very special guest from a sweet little bar, Barcito, downtown Los Angeles, Andrea Borgen Abdallah. An LA native, Andrea spent her summers visiting her grandparents in Buenos Aires, so this experience led her to be fueled with passion for food, beverage, and hospitality. After stints with both the Hillstone Restaurant Group and Danny Meyer's Union's Hospitality Group, she returned to Los Angeles to set out and launch her own concept, an approachable cafe and bar that would anchor the neighborhood community, which Barcito opened in downtown LA, just 3 blocks from the Staples Center in September of 2015. Andrea was named in 2016 Eater Young Gun, has been featured in Zagat's LA 30 Under 30. The restaurant continues to make headlines for its commitment to equitable wages and benefits for all employees, and most recently launched High Road Kitchen, a pay-what-you-can-eat program to provide meals for those with need. I met Andrea when we did our Christmas party 2 years ago, and all I could say, we had great cocktails, great food, and so with that said, we couldn't wait to invite her to be a part of our En Casa series. So please let me introduce you to Andrea Borgen Abdallah, who will tell us a little bit more about her Empanadas de Cerdo. Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't know what else to say after that really lovely introduction. But yeah, you know, I think Barcito is always kind of talked about as this sort of Argentine spot. And while that's certainly true, you know, I think kind of my goal was always just to make it a really approachable place, kind of like my favorite cafes in Buenos Aires. And so, you know, the food itself is not necessarily a super authentic kind of Argentine cuisine. You know, I think the pork empanadas that we're going to do today are a really fantastic example of that, and really more just kind of our take on some kind of traditional Argentine dishes. So, you know, I think braises are not something that are very typical in Argentina, but I think something that we employ a lot in the restaurant as kind of our LA meets Buenos Aires kind of take on a traditional empanada. So I'll kind of just quickly get into it here. So we are going to do just kind of a traditional pork braise. It's a tomato-based braise. And generally, when you are braising meat, the first step is to season and sear it, and then we'll basically put it in a pot, either over the stove, in the oven, or in today's case, in my handy Instapot, for it to cook for either several hours, or in the case of the Instapot, for 30 to 40 minutes, to just kind of get really nice and fork tender, and it'll make a really nice, juicy, tender filling for our empanadas. Let me go ahead and just get into it.
Go ahead, please do.
Fantastic. So kind of like I mentioned, I did go ahead and sear the pork already. Very simple, just oil, salt, pepper. And really the idea with the sear is just that you get a bit of caramelization on it, and just get like a little bit of color on that meat. Obviously does not need to be cooked all the way through. Just kind of getting that sort of Maillard reaction, just a little bit of color to kind of give it a nice base to kind of start with.
Andrea?
Yes.
What cut of pork are you using today?
Great question. We are using pork shoulder, pork butt. Generally, I recommend that you get it whole. For whatever reason, the market was out of whole pork shoulder and pork butt. It's kind of cut into these strips. But that's going to yield, it just has a really nice marbling to it, and going to yield that kind of just like fork tender pull apart effect that you want for this dish.
Yeah, it's my favorite. That's my favorite cut I look for, because I make carnitas and make stews. It's chile verde. It's not bad. For me, it's my favorite cut.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. And the price also can't be beat. So definitely a fun one in the kitchen. So to get started, and again, we can kind of do this in a Dutch oven over the stove is definitely where you want to start. And then you can either kind of continue on the stove, or you can pop it in the oven, sort of depending on what you have in mind and what's kind of most comfortable for you. So just a little bit of oil, can do a blended oil, can do olive oil, kind of whatever you prefer. We're working with about 2 pounds of meat. So we're gonna do an ounce of garlic. And in the restaurant, I know this isn't usually the most ideal thing for home cooks, but we really like to weigh everything. So most measurements are in weight, just kind of makes sure that you're as consistent as possible when you come from one dish to the next. And so I'm kind of talking about everything in terms of weight. So we've got 7 ounces of julienne yellow or white onion, kind of whatever you have on hand. An ounce of chili pepper, an ounce of paprika, and we're going to go ahead and saute that and let that onion and that garlic kind of reduce and get translucent.
Andrea, I know if you were doing an Instapot, it's a lot quicker. However, for those who don't have a Instapot, if they have like a Dutch oven, más o menos how long would it take once it's on the stove or in the oven?
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and do this. We're gonna get those onions and garlic to where they need to be. We'll add the tomato and the pork and the water. And once all of that is kind of there, if you're on the stovetop, you wanna bring it up to basically a boil. And once it's there, let it simmer with the top on for about 2.5 hours, more or less. You know, by the first hour, I would say everything will be cooked. That kind of second hour, third hour are really more about getting that tenderness and really getting the meat to fall apart. And the same is true of the oven. So if you were gonna pull it off of the stove, keep the lid on and then put it about 325 more or less in the oven. Also for about 2.5 to 3 hours. Instapot, 30 minutes.
That's amazing. That is so amazing, 30 minutes.
It's so funny. They seemed just kind of really trendy in this way that I was like, how good could it be? And I had a regular at the restaurant who's become a close friend. We were having dinner and she was raving about it, and I was just kind of honestly making fun of her. And she sent me one, and my husband and I use it all the time. We love it. It's so great. Functionally, it doesn't do anything really all that different that you can't do on your own. It speeds up cooking time so much. Soups and stews and things kind of like that are just a breeze to make, and you don't have to wait 3 hours for dinner to be ready.
I understand you can even make yogurt in those pots.
You can, yeah. They're kind of they're temperature controlled, and then they also have a vent, so it's really nice for anything kind of like that where you need to keep the temperature super steady, but also vent it. So they're lovely. I'm a huge fan.
How big is your pot? Like, I know there's some like crock pots come in like 3 quart, 6 quart. How big is that one that you're cooking in right now?
Enormous. I want to say it's 8 quarts.
Oh, that's great. That's a great size.
Yeah. Definitely takes up more cabinet space than I would like, but it's fantastic. It is nice. It has this kind of like saute function in the beginning. So if you need to sort of start off your soup or stew or whatever you're going to make And then you just kind of add the rest of the ingredients, pop the lid on, and you're sort of good to go.
So I know we were at Barcito for Christmas. I mean, I know empanadas are on the menu. You know, when we were up and functioning back before COVID, how many empanadas were you making? I know you had, like, you sent them out in trios. I can't remember, but they were always so delicious. And so easy, good bar food too.
So we have four different types. So we have kind of a ground beef, which is a little bit more kind of our traditional Argentinian empanada. We have the braised pork, which is what we're making today. We have an arroz con pollo, and we have an artichoke empanada, which is actually vegan if you change out the aioli. So all of our empanadas come with the chimichurri aioli. We also make a vegan cashew aioli, so folks can opt into the vegan version of that artichoke empanada. And actually right now, in addition to selling them by the dozen, we're also selling them frozen. So folks can kind of toss them in their freezer and bake them off as they see fit and as they get hungry as the week gets on. All right, so this is looking pretty good. So I'm just gonna kind of toss my seared pork in here. Just kind of nestle it in there. Tomatoes are just classic whole tomatoes, and they can just go in whole like that, liquid and everything. And then really, all you have to do is just add enough water to cover the meat so that it doesn't start to dry off as that water evaporates off. In the Instant Pot, you have a little bit more leniency just because it really doesn't vent off until the end, and so you're really not getting any water evaporation. Whereas, you know, over the stove or in the oven, you'll definitely get a little bit more. So stove or oven folks definitely want to kind of give it, you know, probably at least a ½ inch of coverage with the water. And then we're just going to top is closed, put it on high, and let it go for about 30 minutes. And I am going to move this out of the way. And once you have kind of gone through that either 30-minute or 2.5-hour process and pull the pork out, tomatoes should have really kind of melted. I really like to kind of stick 2 forks into the meat and sort of peek in and make sure that it's kind of really easy to pull apart. It should be. Definitely should be cooked all the way through, kind of like I mentioned before. That first hour is really more when the cooking happens. And then, you know, I think one of the trickier parts of this is deciding how much liquid to get rid of. You know, I think with the Instapot, it's a little harder because less water evaporates off. So you just kind of want to be mindful, and it just takes a little bit of practice because you want to ensure that the filling continues to be really moist so that it doesn't dry out when you bake it inside the empanada dough. But you also don't want to be too wet. If it's sopping wet, that's going to be a problem too. So usually a cup or 2 is what I drain off. And I usually do it with a colander so that I kind of make sure that all the bits and herbs and everything else that's in there has been, I'm sorry, not herbs, spices all stay intact. And then I'll usually let it cool just out on my countertop. And once it's cool, kind of have a couple of different options. I usually throw in a couple of gloves and we'll start to just pull the meat apart myself, crush any tomatoes that haven't been crushed on their own, and just make sure that everything is really nicely incorporated. And then we add fresh cilantro to the mix to kind of give it that sort of herbal pop. Try not to have the cilantro cooked down just so it is kind of really nice, bright and fresh. And then I like to pop the whole thing in the fridge. So once you have that mix totally incorporated, I think, you know, kind of one of the secrets to empanada folding is making sure that both the tapa and the filling are super cold. They're just much easier to work with that way. And it's less likely that things will kind of fall apart on you as you're kind of trying to figure out your folds.
I just made some empanadas. I was talking to Andrea earlier, there's a great Argentine market. It's been there forever. I'm 50 plus and it's been there as long as I can remember. It's Catalinas. It's on Santa Monica and Vermont or Western. I get those two mixed up. But there they have a great selection of Argentine products. And also if you want to make empanadas at home, they're great for leftovers, chicken, whatever you've got to stuff them in. That's a great tip, Andrea. Thank you. I didn't realize like everything has to be super cold, and it makes sense. So everything could fold in, fold in. As you were saying, the beauty of it all is that once you're done making the empanadas, the brand was Salteñas, because there are other brands that are not named for other reasons. They're not as delicious and as nice as the Argentine product Salteñas. But anyways, so when I make a batch, we have some to eat, and then what do you recommend? Because I know when I make mine, I bake them all. And then we eat what we eat, if there's any leftovers, and then I save them to freeze. So, and then when I take them down, I let them thaw out, and then I do a flash heat, like at 400, for them to pop back. But then they're already cooked. So if we go to Barcito, you said they're frozen. Are they already cooked or are they raw?
They're raw. So yeah, generally, yeah, and it depends, I think, on kind of how many you're making and things like that. You know, to a certain extent, I think making 3 dozen empanadas is just as difficult as making a dozen empanadas, because you're doing all this other process. And so, you know, if you're making a big batch, I generally like to freeze them raw, just because these tapas, the dough, do tend to be really delicate. And so popping it in the oven kind of multiple times will end up likely drying them out. And the filling is obviously already cooked, and so you know, you just end up cooking it so many times. It's not necessarily true, but you just kind of are at a higher risk of drying out either the filling or the dough itself.
That's good to know. I know for when I freeze, this is like a little home tip, is that when I put them in the freezer, I put them on a wood and then parchment, and I freeze them individually. And then when they're frozen, then I take them out and then I put them in my Ziploc bag. Because if you have them cooked or frozen and you put them into a Ziploc bag.
Yeah, they're sticky suckers. So, you know, that's exactly what we do at the restaurant too, is we'll often have them on a sheet pan and we'll put them in the freezer for like an hour, just so that the outside starts to kind of crystallize a little bit, so that we can consolidate them and pack them a little bit closer together without worrying that they all get stuck together, and then you end up with just one big empanada.
Okay. I know while the pork is cooking, can you just share, just off the top of your head, just a quick, you know, simple chimichurri, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like what are the components of a chimichurri?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the restaurant, there's a classic chimichurri sauce which is mostly just an oil and vinegar based sauce with parsley, cilantro, oregano, garlic, chili flake, and red wine vinegar, olive oil based. And we basically take that recipe and we emulsify egg into it. So we turn it into an aioli, so kind of like a mayonnaise meets chimichurri that we use with our empanadas, and then we also use it with another sandwich, actually another couple of sandwiches. We just added a new sandwich with chimichurri aioli on it at the restaurant. But really versatile, really delicious. We just started bottling it and selling it as part of kind of our new provisions menu as well, and it's been flying. It's great. I do have prepped pork mixed together to kind of the next process. So just to kind of give you an idea, kind of what it'll start to look like. Again, you know, you want it to be moist, but not kind of sopping wet. And refrigerating it really does help kind of with this next step. One of my sort of favorite little tips when it comes to portioning and folding the empanadas, I really like to use an ice cream scoop. And the reason, in addition to kind of making sure that the filling sizes are consistent, it also allows you to kind of really pack the meat in, kind of get as much as you possibly can in that sort of size. This is a 2-ounce scoop. They just kind of come out into really nice little balls like that. And you know, when you come to fold the empanadas, which often, especially for beginners, the hardest part is just getting the right amount of filling in there, so that you don't have tons of kind of air gaps, but that you're also able to kind of close it with ease and without the whole thing kind of falling apart on you. So this scoop really makes a huge difference in that sense.
Yeah, those the ice cream, it's called squeezer, what you're doing with the meat, it's great. Besides, like for the empanadas, it's great when you're making cookies, doing other things, because what it does, it keeps everything in uniform size, versus when you kind of eyeball it and scoop it up in your hand. And then, oh gosh, how come your cookies all look the same? It's because you got the scooper.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's super important in a restaurant setting, less important at home, but you know, I brought the ice cream scoop home one day, and my husband was like, this is the easiest empanada folding I've ever done. He was like, it cut our time in half easily. So yeah, it's definitely something that we use around here a lot. And so then when it comes to the empanadas, generally a few different types of folds that you can do. I like to kind of have my scooped out portions just kind of ready to go. And then I also have a greased baking sheet, so I can just put them down directly and either freeze them or pop them in the oven when I'm all done. So put that right in the middle of the tapa like that. And I always say that the hardest part is just kind of getting this initial fold. You just kind of want to use your index finger to sort of push the meat down as you kind of crimp the sides around.
Andrea, I'm sorry, we just had a question. If people can't find the official like empanada wrappers, can folks use like the Pillsbury dough pie crust to do this?
Yeah, I think you could. I think, you know, the results will obviously be really different. I think if you use something like puff pastry, you know, it's likely that there's going to be a little bit kind of more leakage, and then, you know, the dough itself is much flakier, which is delicious, but might not necessarily stand up to the heft of some of the fillings. But I think, yeah, I definitely think. I think maybe like like a pizza dough might be kind of a better fit, just with kind of like the weight of some of these ingredients.
Yeah, it's a lot heartier, not so delicate per se for a pie crust versus something so hearty like an empanada.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, puff pastry just has so much fat in it, which is great. I love that. But yeah, you definitely, I mean, even these ones will pop open on you, and the filling will kind of start to spill and bubble out. So assuming that you don't care about the mess, I think go with whatever you feel like. Yeah, a couple other places that have great empanada wrappers. Grand Casino out in Culver City makes their own, and they're fantastic.
What was the name of that one more time? I'm sorry.
Grand Casino Bakery.
Grant?
Grand, like Grand Avenue.
Oh, Grant. Okay.
Yeah, they're an Argentine bakery out in Culver City. And then Super King often carries the Las Alteñas as well. And they have a location over here on San Fernando, and they have one in Pasadena. Kind of
Thank you.
Where you're located. So once we kind of get that half moon shape, I'm gonna try and just get a little bit closer to the camera for this part. Sort of I think the first most kind of typical fold is kind of that like crimp all along the sides. Kind of just do this sort of triangular fold as you go. And generally, as I kind of do it, I'll continue to like push the filling down. So it's like really kind of compact, again, trying to avoid any of those kind of air holes. So that when you bite into the empanada, you just kind of have this really nice, full.
Andrea, who taught you how to do those beautiful folds?
Some combination of my mom and grandmother. I will say though, I've been making empanadas my whole life, and it wasn't until I was in Barcito and one of my line cooks had called out and I had to stand there and make like hundreds of them at a time that I finally really started to perfect my folds. Kind of like I said before, you know, I think the hardest part of this is just getting that initial kind of crimp, getting the filling to stay in place. And we can do that guy just one more time, and then I'll show you two other folds that I kind of like to do.
So I know you make a variety of empanadas, Andrea, but like how do you differentiate the different empanadas? So they don't know, that's the only one I know how to do is kind of scoop it over. But if I were to make a vegetarian one or a chicken one, how can we switch it out?
Yeah, exactly. So the whole reason for multiple folds is so that, you know, folks who are in a restaurant and have made 100 empanadas know which ones are which. So this is generally the fold that we use for our beef empanadas. I'll show you right now the fold that we do for our pork. So every empanada starts out the same way. You just kind of seal the top of it. And then there's kind of a million different types of folds and things that you can do. This one's kind of simple, but it's really cute. It's kind of actually one of my favorite ones, I think. And you just kind of, not sealing very well. Yeah, one of the other things, kind of depending on what type of dough you have, is if you sort of leave it out of the fridge for too long, it'll start to dry out on you a little bit too. So sometimes you also kind of just want to have like a wet towel or something like that on top of them so that they don't dry out. Just kind of these three sort of simple little folds along the top. It kind of gives you this like zigzag around the top.
Very cool.
And that's our pork empanada folds that we do at the restaurant. And this last one I really like a lot too. If you do find that happening, or maybe like kind of the top of your empanada layers start to dry out on you, I would just grab from the middle and then maybe kind of use that sort of damp cloth method to sort of revive them a little bit, pop them back in the fridge even.
Now, are we going to bake these or are we going to fry these?
You have both options for sure. I generally bake them, but yeah, I mean, you can fry them. Traditionally, the beef ones are more often fried than anything. Beef and cheese are the two that in Argentina we fry a lot. Everything else tends to be baked. But it's kind of one of those regional things where sort of depending on where you're from, ends up dictating generally how you cook your empanadas and what the fillings are as well. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have Julie Diaz Martinez. She's asking if you ever use egg to bind them.
So in the beef one and the ground beef, we do. Ground beef is one of those, it's both to bind, but it's also to kind of help ensure that there's moisture. Just because especially with the way that beef ends up cooking, it's so difficult. You know, you're not going to braise ground beef. The moisture level is just really hard to maintain, and so we end up using egg, a little bit of milk and some bread to really bind it together and help it retain that moisture. So that after it cooks and after it comes out of the fryer, because we do fry our beef ones at Barcito, it's just like melts apart and is super moist inside. So for this guy, it's actually kind of really easy. Just kind of pull the two sides into the middle like that. Just kind of seal it in the front. And that's it. It just kind of stands up like that.
It looks like a ravioli or
Yeah.
tortellini, like a tortellini.
These are our artichoke empanadas. That's the wrap that we usually do for the artichoke empanadas. That's it. Got one more here, so I'll just do that one more time. And yeah, kind of like we talked about, can either pop these in the freezer and sort of do that kind of quick freeze before you consolidate them and either throw them into a Ziploc bag or some other kind of aluminum pan, or just pop them directly in the oven. And so for the oven, recommend basically 350 degrees, and kind of want to cook these guys off for 20 to 30 minutes. I think ovens tend to really vary, but you know, kind of keep in mind that the filling is already totally cooked. So all you're really looking to achieve is just whatever kind of color and texture you want that crust to be. I tend to like mine like a little softer and chewier. So I tend to be kind of closer to the 20-minute mark. My mom likes them just like super golden brown and crispy. So we diverge there, but up to you.
So Andrea, so once you bake them, and of course we're not going to eat them all because you're going to make a whole bunch, how long do they last outside? Do you put them in the refrigerator? Do you put them in a covered box?
Yeah, I would definitely kind of outside on the countertop, probably not leave them more than a few hours. And just kind of whatever you feel comfortable with in terms of, you know, cooked meat, but probably 3 to 4 hours I think would be my max, and it's certainly the max at the restaurant. And then in the fridge, give it a week. I think a week would be plenty for an empanada. And so when we pop it out of the oven, I already did one just to, you know, kind of my Food Network magic. That's generally what it'll look like. So kind of like I said, I like mine a little bit softer, so just kind of that like slight golden brown. And then sort of like I mentioned at the restaurant, we serve it with chimichurri aioli. It's not super traditional to eat it with a sauce. They generally are just kind of eaten as is, but you know, in the United States, we really like sauce, so we sauce them up here. But that is pretty much the finished product.
Can you tell us more about Barcito? What are you guys doing now in these times of COVID? The little store that you're opening up for the neighborhood. What kind of items are on your menu for takeout? Cocktails, wine. Tell us more, please.
Yeah, we're doing all kinds of weird stuff. So when we first were shut down, we never closed completely and kind of quickly pivoted to a takeout and delivery model. And kind of within the first or 2 weeks, it became super clear to us that the community in downtown was having a really tough time going to the grocery store, trying to get some essential items. And so we really pivoted to try and be that kind of one-stop shop for them. Not necessarily because it was the most profitable idea, but it just kind of felt important. And kind of in that process, I think we learned a lot about ourselves, and I think the kind of place that we want to be, both now and when all of this is over. And so have also since kind of become more of a bodega and bottle shop. And so we have totally changed our pricing model to basically be competitive with retail and have a huge selection of natural wine and craft beer. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, we have sort of a whole selection of provisions now. And so different items that we sell at the restaurant, from the vegan cashew aioli to the chimichurri aioli to a chicken liver pate, all kinds of selections for folks to kind of help stock their fridges during these very strange times. And it kind of changed our menu pretty dramatically as well, just because I think the types of foods that you enjoy, you know, sitting in a restaurant or sitting out on the patio are very different than what you enjoy eating out of a takeout box. And so have kind of added a variety of deli sandwiches and sort of things that I think keep much better and just feel like a better fit for kind of these times. And I think also for the price point that we want to try and hit. You know, I think everyone's been impacted by this in some way, shape, or form, and just want to continue to be a super approachable and affordable place that people can depend on.
That's amazing. Thank you. I know being downtown is somewhat a little isolating. It's not as easy as out in the suburbs. But before we go further about the restaurant, I have two questions. How hot should the oven be? And also how much time to be left this should be in the oven? Folks, don't worry. We have the recipe for those who signed up in Zoom. As a thank you, we will be sending you the recipe for those who are watching us right now. These are some key questions. Andrea?
Yeah, so for the final bake of the empanadas, you want the oven to be at about 350. For the initial braise that we did earlier, you want the oven to be about 325, so a little bit lower.
And how long should they be baking? They bake for?
20 to 30 minutes. So kind of depending on how you like your crust is sort of where I think you fall in that 20. And I think, you know, ovens kind of range a little bit too, but just keep in mind that the filling's already cooked. So really all you're trying to do is achieve a little bit of color on your crust. And as soon as that's cooked to kind of your liking, you can pull them out.
I know you have a beautiful wine selection there, Barcito. For these pork empanadas, what type of grape should we be drinking with those empanadas?
Oh man, I really like chilled reds right now. We have we have a really nice selection of kind of light-skinned red wines that are really great with a slight chill on them. One in particular that I'm loving is a Carbonic Sangiovese that's grown out in Ballard Canyon, part of Santa Barbara. Just kind of really nice pairing with this sort of lighter meat. I think the two balance each other out really nicely.
Nice. For the folks who are here for the first time who do not know where Barcito is, can you be so kind to share your location, your website, your Instagram? How can we find you to get these delicious empanadas y más?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on the corner of 12th and Grand in downtown Los Angeles, just kind of a few blocks from the Staples Center. Our website is barcitola.com, and our Instagram handle is also barcitola. Pretty much our entire menu is on our website and on our link in our bio for our Instagram, and everything can be ordered online. We do curbside pickup. We've been super cautious with both our staff and with our guests, and so taking tons of precautions to make sure that there's kind of as little contact as possible, which, you know, really hurts, but is important right now.
No, absolutely. Oh, we have Eloisa Cruz says, Barcito is awesome. We love Barcito and Andrea.
We love them. They're so great.
Great. Any last comments? What special items must have on your menu that's to go?
No, the one comment that I think I want to make that I haven't made yet is, you know, I think kind of like we said, these tapas, the dough for the empanadas are available in a lot of different places. And I think, you know, when it comes to filling them, have fun with it. I think play with it. You know, braises like this are super simple, but make them your own, add your own spices and herbs and whatever you think will kind of resonate most with you, and have fun with it.
Okay, let me see. I got one more here. Let's see. Bruce Lassenby says hello. And let's see who else. Yes, and then Eloisa, but oh, there's Averaldo.
Hi there. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I love empanadas. I've tried Argentine empanadas, and I'm going to have to try some more. I was checking out your menu, and I've posted your website on our Facebook and also on our Zoom. So check it out. I was checking it out, and I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. So you may see me later on tonight.
Mission accomplished.
Thank you so much to and Jimena as well. I know you have some experience with these empanadas as well. I see that you do, Andrea, you do sell frozen empanada, the shells, or barcito.
We do, yes. Yeah, it's kind of a limited availability, so I didn't want to put it on blast too much, but they're fantastic. They're the La Salteña ones as well. Very good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan.
All right. Great. Yeah, Bruce is saying my wife and I had dinner with you at La Plaza last year's cooking class. So thank you to Bruce. Thank you to everybody that attended today. We were a little bit delayed on Facebook Live, but you can always catch our YouTubes, our En Casa sessions on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA, You can also catch them here on Facebook at La Plaza LA. And then also on our website, which is lapca.org or laplazala.org. We, like I said, every Monday, it's En Casa con La Plaza Cocina. So next week, I can't tell you what we're having. It's not a surprise. I just don't have it in front of me. But the rest, you can check out all our Zoom sessions on our website, laplazala.org. or our Facebook page. They're all listed there on our Facebook page. I'm going to go ahead and bring something up right now for the rest of the week. This is a good one. We usually have 3 sessions. We're having 4 sessions this week. So thank you so much, Andrea. Tomorrow, Tuesday, July 28th, a collaboration that we have with the Mexican American Cultural Educational Foundation. We'll be presenting Ana Valdez, Executive President of the Latino Donor Collaborative. On Wednesday, the July 28th, we have here at La Plaza an exhibition that opened up late February. Unfortunately, we were only open for 3 weeks before we, along with all other institutions, temporarily closed down. But you'll have an opportunity to speak with the curator, at least in conversation with the curator, Mariah, an advisor, Lamikia, Janelle Hartley, who was one of the contributors, and Esperanza Sanchez, who's the project director for the exhibit. You'll also get a sneak preview of a walkthrough video. And then finally on Friday, Nancy Sanchez singing Mexican American art pop. So this is all great stuff. I know if you've tuned in before, we have a big variety of conversations, presentations, demonstrations, and in this case, a wonderful demonstration of Argentinian empanadas. So thanks to our sponsors, SoCal Gas and California Humanities and the National Endowment for the Humanities as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, the CARES Act. Thanks all to you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed our En Casa sessions, please join us as a member of La Plaza. And you'll be the first to know about our reopening. You'll be in with exhibition, VIP exhibition receptions when we start having them again, and other amazing things as being benefits as being a member. So please take a look at our page there, and hope you join us. So upcoming sessions at our website, on Facebook. That's it for today. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos. Y nos vemos pronto.
Gracias. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.